Previously on The Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Well, Noel Whittaker's my name. I'm multi-skilled, I guess. When I was 5 or 6, I dreamed of having my own radio show. At the age of 10, I was selling milk to the school teachers. I would sell pork. At 16, I had my own honey brand. Well, I'm a positive person, I think. And I've also learned that something that you wanted that didn't happen, the fact that it didn't happen was one of the best things ever, because it's the universe taking you somewhere else.
It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. I'm Australian, and I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians of country where I live and work. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge our continuous connection and contribution to land, sea, and community. Happy New Year, everyone. It is 2021, and it doesn't matter who you are and where you're listening from, because we just found out that you listen from 31 countries just on Spotify itself. So I thank you for the pleasure of your company. For me, 2021 represents new possibility. I suppose every year represents starting fresh, but we can all start fresh from this very minute if we decide that that's what we're gonna. For us, and when I say us, you might just hear my voice, but the team behind me make everything. That is Corinne with the content and research and facts, Jenna with the guest scheduling and research before the interview, Tiago making us all sound way too good with the audio editing and sound design, and Kaylee, who really is the heartbeat of the show. She does all the facts, the production, the project management, amongst other things, like reminding me when I've missed a deadline or when I'm about to miss the deadline. So for us, this year represents giving a voice to the ones that need to be heard the most. That means bringing up issues that no one else likes to talk about, and doing exactly that, talking about those issues. It means looking into the conversations that we all just need to have, rather than escape into our escapism, whether it's work or social media or exercise or whatever that looks like for you. This year, we are dedicated to bringing you all sides of every conversation we have, however hard the conversation might be to have. We start the year with the death penalty. I wonder what that tells you about me, but the death penalty is not really about death as much as it is about life. It should actually be called the life penalty, because you really penalize a life here. In our research, and we've done a bit of research, the most consumable way to cover this topic, as in the most humorous way and the most well done way, is one done by John Oliver on his show Last Week Tonight. He starts with where capital punishment really came from. It came from the greatest country on the planet. I know you Americans are probably going, me, me, me. No, not you. I'm talking about Great Britain.
The history of capital punishment in Britain is a long and bloody one. Since the Middle Ages, those condemned to death have variously faced being boiled alive, burnt at the stake, or hung, drawn, and quartered.
This is the head crusher.
The small and seemingly innocuous thumb biter originates in 14th century Scotland. These devices have almost childlike names, like pennywinkies.
Ooh, that's right, pennywinkies.
a delightful English cousin of the throaty tug-tug and the jolly shocky buzz-buzz tickly-wickly seat.
Let's not even begin to dig into Great Britain and the crimes it has committed and focus on what the leaders have to say about the death penalty, starting with President Barack Obama.
In the application of the death penalty in this country, we have seen significant problems. I think we do have to, as a society, ask ourselves some difficult and profound questions.
And of course, we all have to know what President Donald J. Trump thinks about most things. So, Donnie, what do you reckon?
I've always supported the death penalty. I don't even understand people that don't.
We have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price.
Death penalty. Bring it forth.
Now they give the death penalty where they give a slight injection so that they don't have pain when the needle goes in to slowly put them to sleep. I mean, these people have to be treated very, very severely, and they're not treated severely.
Very much in favor of the death penalty, especially for terrorists and especially for people that, killers that you see so many with the girls that are being killed and then they capture these guys. I am so for the death penalty.
We will believe the right punishment, and we all do, for cop killers is called the death penalty.
Remember the old days, a deserter, what happened? Bang.
He deserted. In the old days when we were a strong country, it would be boom, gone.
Spies in the old days used to be executed.
Bing, and it goes quickly, right? It's called, you're dead. Treason. It's treason. You don't even hear that word. It's treason.
In the old days, boom, firing squad. No, it's true. I love the Second Amendment.
Somebody said the other day, well, he had some psychological problems. Well, in the old days, bing, bong. When we were strong.
So here's my argument. And I've had this argument since I went to university with different people within my peer group. In the comfort of life with full tummies and comfortable homes, our best solution to teaching someone a lesson is to kill them. I feel really down when I think about this because even though I really want gang rapes to never happen, ever, I can't even imagine these incidents. And here's the point. Neither can you, unless you've been through it. Let's talk about that for a second. There is a famous gang rape incident that happened in India in 2012. And the details of that crime are very gruesome. It is very difficult to consume, and it was really hard for me to even go through this and watch all the documentaries that have been done about that particular incident. Here is an Al Jazeera report.
It was the moment many Indians had been waiting for 7 years, and before dawn on Thursday, they counted down the seconds till the 4 convicts were hanged. No one in the country was more relieved than the parents of the victim. Because the law doesn't allow a rape victim to be named, the Indian media calls her Nirbhaya, that means the fearless one.
The crime that was committed against her is always going to cause me grief, but I am proud that if she were alive today, I'd be called a doctor's mother, and today I am proud that I brought her into this world, and now I am known as Nirbhaya's mother. I couldn't save her life, but fought to get her justice.
It's 7 years since Nirbhaya and a male friend were on a bus journey in Delhi. The 23-year-old physiotherapy student was gang raped by 6 men and her friend beaten before they were thrown out onto the side of a road. Their ordeal led to some of the biggest protests ever seen in India, with widespread demands for justice, not only for Nirbhaya, but better protection for all women. India is consistently ranked as one of the worst countries to be a woman.
In these instances, the most important voice that needs to be heard are the women. It isn't really cool to see men get on a high horse about dishing out retribution for something they don't fucking understand. So this report, like all other reports, can be found in the show notes. It is a report where 6 women discussing capital punishment for rape in India. Some parts of this report are the women speaking in Hindi, but most of this is them expressing themselves in English. The first voice you hear is Pearl Lumba. This is a lawyer at Tis Hazari Court.
I guess first we need to realize capital punishment or any form of punishment is not going to undo what happened. It's not going to change it can create a deterrence. I guess law mein hum logo ka basic hota hai punishment is to create a deterrence so that people have a fear or they can actually sit back and think कि यार ये नहीं करना क्यों नहीं करना क्योंकि ये वजह है. लोगों को रोकने के लिए भी ना एक रीजन देना पड़ता है कि ये इसलिए नहीं करना क्योंकि ये सजा मिलेगी.
No, if there was evidence that capital punishment reduced the incidence of rape, there's no evidence at all. Nowhere in the world has it reduced the incidence of rape. Deterrence is absolutely a point.
There has been no credible evidence to prove that capital punishment deters crime more effectively than life imprisonment. Not only that, but there has been a significant amount of evidence to show that it's fairly common for people to be wrongly convicted of the crimes that put them on death row. An article published by the ACLU claims that since 1973, 123 people in 25 states in America have been released from death row because they were not guilty. Another study published in the Stanford Law Review documents 350 capital convictions in this century in which it was later proven that the convict had not committed the crime. Of those, 25 convicts were executed, while the others spent decades of their lives in prison.
I'm sure that would have been a depressing fact Kaylee just brought up. But in a lot of parts of the world, rape is a big problem.
On to Bangladesh now, which has introduced the death penalty for rape after days of protests sparked by a series of sexual assault cases. Demonstrations were witnessed across the country after a disturbing piece of footage of a group of men seen stripping and attacking a woman. This piece of footage went viral on social media. The clip sparked outrage across the South Asian country. The Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, was also facing an internal outcry within the ruling party's ranks over her perceived inaction. According to the government, the law would be put into effect by the president on Tuesday. Earlier, the maximum punishment for rape was life imprisonment. However, women's rights activists have been urging the authorities to ensure proper implementation of the current regulations instead of focusing on making the law stricter. According to a rights group, at least 975 women have been raped in Bangladesh in the first 9 months of 2020. This means, on an average, around 23 women have been gang raped every month over the last 9 months. A similar number of rapes was reported during the same period last year as well, but activists say that the actual figure could be a lot higher as many women are reluctant to report sexual assault.
I know you must be saying, Ronsley, why now? What made you start talking about this? Well, it all started with Brendan Bernard. This is the BBC World Service.
A federal prison in the United States has carried out the execution of a convicted killer, Brandon Bernard. The African-American man was part of a gang who abducted, robbed and murdered 2 white youth ministers in 1999. Well, he's the 9th federal inmate to have been put to death since July. More federal prisoners have been executed in the US this year than in the previous 56 years combined. Lebu DeSecco has this report.
Brandon Bernard had been on death row for the last 20 years, and on Thursday he became the first federal prisoner to be executed during the presidential transition. It's one of 5 that are scheduled. If the rest go ahead, Donald Trump will have overseen the deaths of 13 federal inmates since July this year, more than any president in over a century. The federal death penalty was reinstated in 1988, but executions were rare. Just 3 had taken place since then, and none since 2003. But in July, the Trump administration resumed the practice after a 17-year hiatus. Brandon Bernard's case had attracted the support of celebrities like Kim Kardashian West. The reality star and prison reform activist had called on her followers to tweet Donald Trump to save Mr. Bernard. And tomorrow, another federal execution is scheduled at the same penitentiary in Indiana. These executions come just weeks before Joe Biden takes office, and he has said that he will seek to end the death penalty. The incumbent president would usually defer to his successor and let the president-elect set the course. But Donald Trump's attorney general says he is just following the law. He says he owes it to the victims and their families to carry forward this sentence. Lebu Diseko, BBC News, Washington.
It is weird that while the coronavirus is killing millions of us, 2020 is also going to be known for this.
This is becoming the year of accelerating federal executions. 9 people have been killed so far by lethal injection, and it is a list that continues to grow. More are destined to die in the final days of the Trump presidency. All have been executed at this Indiana federal prison. The man who was killed last night was Brandon Bernard. He was an 18-year-old gang member when Todd and Stacey Bagley were abducted and shot. Bernard set alight the car their bodies were in.
This is my daughter, Kiera.
The celebrities and activists who advocated for clemency for him said he was a reformed character, genuinely remorseful.
I would like to tell them that I have tried to be a better person since that day. I can't imagine how they feel about losing their family, and I wish that we can all go back and change it. And I'm sorry for all the pain that I caused.
Some members of the jury who sentenced Bernard to death 21 years ago now regret it.
The death penalty is far too harsh for his level of involvement in this crime.
For Bernard's family members speaking ahead of his death, he never deserved the death penalty given his role.
I think it will be a horrible mark on the honor of our justice system to put him to death.
We're really seeing this as kind of aberrant behavior on the part of the federal government and Attorney General Barr.
And those monitoring it closely are shocked by the acceleration of executions.
These executions, this string of executions, Brandon Bernard is the 9th person who's been executed by the federal government since July. Before that time, the federal government had executed no one in the past 17 years. And frankly, in the modern federal death penalty, that's since 1988, there had only been 3 people executed before this year. So here we have an administration that has tripled the number of executions.
Opponents of the death penalty gathered outside the prison last night. They are vowing to protest every one of the executions being rushed through in these final days of the Trump administration. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
When we come back, we are going into the research done by Middle Ground, where they brought together 6 brilliant individuals, 3 for and 3 against the death penalty. Here's how the first of the discussions start.
First statement, step forward if you agree. If you do not agree, if it is not true for you, stay exactly where you are. Having a death penalty deters people from committing crimes.
I don't know that any regular human, the average human, which is who we're speaking about, would risk their life when that survival instinct is so incredibly ingrained and so strong.
That's the foundation of my entire argument, the reason why I stay on the left-hand side. Not because I feel that capital punishment should be handed out, dished out to everyone that commits a crime. No, I'm talking about the idea that in my opinion, capital punishment is a deterrent. It influences the way people behave. Look at Michigan. Michigan abolished capital punishment in 1858.
Exactly.
Look at the crime rate in Michigan right now.
Ridiculous.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Our aim with this audio documentary has always been to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and creatives to provide a space where they can use their voice to share their authenticity with the world. As a valued listener, your voice matters too. We love to hear your feedback and ideas. So don't be shy to let us know how we're doing in the ratings and comments. If you have a message for our production team or know someone who would be a perfect fit as a guest, you can find out more information on how to share your input at psychologyofontrepreneurship.com.
Welcome back. We are going to dive into some pros and cons of the death penalty. We are talking about the research done by Middle Ground, where they brought together 6 brilliant individuals, 3 for and 3 against the death penalty. This is a show about finding middle ground and is probably the most unbiased of all the reports we've found. This research and conversation is very intellectual and mind-blowingly brilliant. I commend all 6 of these humans. Again, the link to this and all other links can be found in the show notes at psychologyofontrepreneurship.com. Let's start with this. Can anyone be rehabilitated back into society?
No matter how much you try to rehabilitate someone, they also have to want to be rehabilitated in order for that to work out.
That's the thing. We're assuming people don't want to be rehabilitated. That's my whole point, is that if you can believe that people don't want to be rehabilitated, though, then you have to also believe the possibility that they could redeem themselves and do something amazing after that rehabilitation happens.
For those people that are just like past rehabilitation, are they deserving of death? Is that what we've come to?
It really depends on, again, the circumstances, what this crime is.
But that's where we get into, like, who are we to say who's deserving or not? We need to actually know their entire story and who they are as a person, their upbringing, what got them into that situation, their mental stability. All of those things can be taken more into consideration.
But that goes to say that once you read their book that you're going to be empathetic, and it's clear that they've taken the side.
You can't have empathy when families have lost their kids due to those killings.
That's the entire most important time to have empathy.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yep.
Is when families have gone through that, to understand what the family's going through on top of what the person went through.
You can't have empathy when people have lost loved ones. Really? Do people actually deserve a second chance?
So ending someone's life, that is the height of violence.
Pre-med, if it was calculated, I don't think you deserve a second chance. And in my opinion, for a crime like that, no, I don't care. I have no remorse. I have no mercy for anyone who kills anyone.
Okay, there was, I spoke about this the other day. There was a woman who set her husband on fire, killed him for raping her 7-year-old daughter. She found him, murdered him. That was not self-defense.
That's revenge.
It was premeditated.
That's revenge. That's
yes,
my opinion.
and yes, she deserves the death penalty. It is
What?
still she can listen. She can go through the legal. I don't care how much it hurts. I understand that. I understand it, but you still need to go through the legal process like everybody else. Mm-hmm. You don't take it into your own hands to go and
you guys talk about the death penalty like it's global justice, like you're doing something for the world, like you're removing a threat. But that woman was doing some global justice if I ever heard it.
That was not her right to do, though. That's not how it works.
How is it that you say that a jury of your peers, that we as citizens, we as the constituency, we have that right then? What, because we have numbers, because we have some process?
A death penalty is a state-sanctioned homicide. It still is a homicide, but it is decided by multiple people.
I know.
At that point,
here's the thing. I think we need to go above the legal system in this dialogue because it was legal to have slaves.
Yeah, exactly.
So whenever we say legal system, we have to go beyond this.
And that was
This
also
is where our
abolished.
ideas transcend what we're talking about.
You don't take it into your own hands when it suits you. A state-sanctioned homicide. So, how does the state decide that this particular instance is a genuine case for them to commit this sanctioned homicide? Well, how do you know if someone is being genuine? How do you really know?
If someone genuinely apologizes for a crime, their punishment should be reduced.
I just want to... the thing is, like, of course, it's the hardest part of this concept, this idea, is how do you judge someone's genuine authenticity in their apologeticness, right? I specifically remember a case, Stanley Tookie Williams, this guy really convinced me that he was apologetic for his crime. And the thing was, he believed he didn't even commit the crime. He was innocent of the crime, but he was still apologetic for his past crimes that he had done in his life and the things that he did get convicted for. So when I saw that he made a children's book about preventing other kids from actually ending up where he ended up as a gang member and leader of the Crips, I believe, That was enough for me, where he's actually going out of his way to prevent future crime from happening for other people. I'm like, all right, I accept your apology, man. I accept that big time.
And there's no way of validating an apology. I mean, like, how do you know if they're apologizing, they're lying? That happens a lot. I mean, there are people who seem so genuine and behind their eyes, they're not, they're not truthful.
You have to go and watch this whole report done by Middle Ground, and the link to that is in the show notes. It ends with a couple of big questions that they ask the participants, which include, I'm afraid that there are innocent people on death row, and a really important debate that all 6 of them have around this one statement. If my mother were to commit murder, I would vouch for her to receive capital punishment. Again, this link can be found in the show notes at psychologyoфentrepreneurship.com. It is worth every second.
At this point in time, the death penalty is currently legal in 53 countries. But the world is slowly coming around to abolishing the death penalty, with many people believing that life imprisonment is a more acceptable form of punishment. In 2019, 657 executions were recorded worldwide in 20 countries, which was the lowest number that Amnesty International had recorded in the last decade. These figures excluded executions performed in China and North Korea, as they don't share their numbers with the public. But it is believed that thousands of executions are carried out in both countries per year.
In this last part, I'd like to focus on the actual execution part, starting with this.
We begin in Oklahoma tonight with an execution that didn't go as planned.
A convicted killer from Oklahoma dies after a botched execution.
So executions get botched all the time. And if the people in charge have no empathy, like Rick Perry, the Texas governor, who you'll hear from now.
Your state has executed 234 death row inmates, more than any other governor in modern times. Have you struggled to sleep at night with the idea that any one of those might have been innocent?
No, sir, I've never struggled with that at all.
It is really disgusting to hear the clapping in the background. And you know what I want to acknowledge, that I have no experience of having lost someone to a heinous crime. So my viewpoint on the matter is tainted, just like yours. So how does a state-sanctioned homicide happen?
Methods of execution vary state by state and depend on states' histories and court decisions. Still, lethal injection is, far and away, the primary method of execution in the United States. Since 1982, 32 states, the federal government, and the military have adopted lethal injection as their primary method of execution. From 1982 to 1992, authorities developed a 3-drug protocol, a mix of 3 substances to cause death.
These 3 drugs are 1. Sodium thiopental, 2. Pancuronium bromide, and 3. Potassium chloride. Sodium thiopental is to render the condemned inmate unconscious. Pancuronium bromide is to paralyze the condemned inmate's voluntary muscles. And finally, potassium chloride is to rapidly induce cardiac arrest and cause death. Well, if that doesn't work, there are secondary methods of execution.
Other methods. Some states have secondary methods of execution which permit them to execute criminals in other manners. States have secondary methods of execution available for 2 reasons. First, some states allow the convicted person the choice of how to be executed. Second, some states want to be prepared in case lethal injection is found to be unconstitutional or the necessary drugs become unavailable. The secondary method of execution varies from state to state. For example, upon the choice of the condemned, Alabama allows execution by electrocution, Arizona by gas chamber, Delaware by hanging, and Mississippi by firing squad. Most states and the federal government still employ the death penalty. However, they can only do so within a limited set of circumstances. The Supreme Court's approach to the death penalty has caused a trend away from capital punishment.
That feels like a lot of premeditation. Would you consider this to be state-sanctioned premeditated murder? That's deep. But that aside, is there hope? Do death row inmates ever get clemency? Here is a report on an inmate in Texas.
The U.S. Supreme Court granted a last-minute reprieve to a Texas inmate scheduled to be executed last night. Ruben Gutierrez, who was convicted of murder, says his religious rights were being violated. Under current Texas policy, a priest would not be able to accompany Gutierrez, who is a Catholic, to the death chamber. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
Ruben Gutierrez was scheduled to die last night, but his execution was stayed approximately 1 hour before it was set to begin. One of his attorneys argued, as a devout Catholic, Mr. Gutierrez's faith requires the assistance of clergy to help him pass from life into afterlife. But an updated Texas prison system policy bans clergy from the death chamber.
Listening to this makes me wonder how good his lawyers were. That last voice in that report was one of his lawyers. So here is the question. Would that still happen if this person was Muslim and his faith was Islam? The head of the Catholic Church very recently made the death penalty inadmissible.
Every October 10th is dedicated to reflecting upon the abolition of the death penalty, a sentence that Pope Francis declared inadmissible. On this point, in 2018, Pope Francis authorized the modification of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Point 2267 of the Catechism stated that the Church did not exclude capital punishment if it was the only possible way of effectively defending human lives against the unjust aggressor. Although it also noted that such cases are very rare, it legitimized the application of this acceptable, albeit extreme, means of safeguarding the common good. Now the Catholic Church does not allow for the death penalty in any case.
Per quanto grave possa essere stato il reato commesso, la pena di morte è inammissibile perché attenta all'inviolabilità e dignità della persona.
The translation of what Pope Francis is saying here is, quote, however serious the crime committed may have been, the death penalty is inadmissible because it undermines the inviolability and dignity of the person, end quote. Before we wrap this up, I would like you to consider the impact media has on you on any subject, especially the death penalty. Because in 1989, Donald Trump had full-page ads with a massive headline run in the New York Times, the Daily News, the New York Post, and New York Newsday, saying he wanted to, quote, hate these muggers and murderers and, quote, they should be forced to suffer when they kill. They should be executed for their crimes, end quote. This is on the back of the Central Park 5. It's a famous case, and here is a brief breakdown of the case. On April 19th, 1989, 5 male teens were accused of gang raping and nearly killing a white woman in New York City's Central Park, thus named the Central Park Joggers case, or the Central Park 5. None of the suspects' DNA matched the DNA collected from the crime scene, but the 5 young defendants were falsely accused of the crimes nonetheless. After serving out their sentences, they were all exonerated when a fellow inmate confessed to the crimes. They subsequently sued the city of New York for malicious prosecution, racial discrimination, and emotional distress, as 3 of them were Black or Latino. In 2014, the city of New York settled the suit for $21 million. In the next volume, we will be talking with a gentleman that has been on death row for decades.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing, voiceovers, and sound design by Kaylee Bonnyman and Tiago Vega. Guest research and content by Claire Gould and Corinne Castles. Project managed by Kaylee Bonnyman. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Love the polished audio docuseries style of this podcast, The Psychology of Entrepreneurship? At We Are Podcast, you can learn how to create a similar style for your own show. This revolutionary virtual event assembles podcasters, entrepreneurs, and marketers in one spot, so you're able to learn from the masters. Head straight to wearepodcast.com to reserve your spot at our next event.